Canadian football is a magic show, a century-old spectacle, grown men battling to cross a line drawn in the dirt. It is a game filled with heroes, great players and great teams, bringing championship pride to their faithful fans. The field is a battleground where skill and determination are the tools of the trade. It is a game that has grabbed the nation by the heart. An annual struggle becomes an epic battle as teams fight for the ultimate glory. The chance to hold the Grey Cup and become forever known as a champion. Canadian football was born in the mid-1800s, a child of rugby reshaped by robust young men off on a new world adventure. The version they devised, rougher, tougher, bloodier, found a home on university athletic fields where the student body became the game's first fans. But this wonderful new game was strictly a Canadian phenomenon until a fateful weekend in 1874 when the men of McGill University accepted an invitation to play 2 matches at Harvard and found the Americans playing a different game entirely, an offshoot of soccer containing little of the rough and tumble chaos now so dear to the Canadians' hearts.
They played 1 game under the Canadian rules, under McGill's rules, 1 game under the Harvard rules. In the end, Harvard enjoyed the type of football that McGill brought so much that they wrote away to rugby school in England and they got the official rugby rules.
The game of the North was now a cross-border phenomenon. Soon, it spilled over the campuses and into the cities, then west with the settlers. No longer merely the sport of the educated elite, it became the game of the working masses. Teams sprang out of meetings held in rooms over grocery stores, in mechanics halls and rowing clubs. Bankers bashed ironworkers. Lawyers took their lumps from lumberjacks. Leagues were born, collapsed, and rose again. A new country had a new game and new heroes. By the turn of the century, football had been embraced by athletes of all ages and from all walks of life, competing for trophies of every shape and size. In 1909, word of this new game caught the attention of Albert Henry George Grey, the 4th Earl Grey and the Governor-General of Canada. Well-known patrons of Canadian arts, the Earl and his wife decided that the new game should have a true national championship. At a cost of $48, Lord Grey provided a simple silver trophy that would one day be the stuff of dreams, the Grey Cup.
The cup was donated by the Governor-General, Lord Earl Grey, who probably never saw a game played. He put up the trophy for the Amateur Football Championship of Canada, and people who were playing football in all parts of Canada saw it as emblematic of the national championship.
The first Grey Cup game was held on a chilly December Saturday in 1909. 3,800 fans made the trek to Rosedale Field to watch the University of Toronto defeat the Parkdale Canoe Club in what was rather grandly called the Canadian Championship. But Lord Grey's trophy wasn't there. Someone had forgotten to have it engraved. The games then were simple gatherings, young and not so young athletes out for a rough and tumble afternoon. But soon, Earl Grey's Cup was more than just another trophy. As the decades passed and the number of challengers grew, it would become the new game's Holy Grail. In the 1940s, not even a world in conflict could halt the yearly quest. When Canada went to war, enlisted men formed teams and battled for the Cup under military banners. Through rain, fog, mud, or the chill of Canadian winter, the Cup chase never faltered. Now the pursuers wanted more than the championship. They wanted that magical, matchless moment when they could grasp Earl Grey's Cup and triumphantly hold it high.
When you win the Grey Cup, you know, you're on such a high because you've accomplished what 9 teams start out to do and only 1 does.
What it meant to the city of Winnipeg and the fans, that's when it starts sinking in of just how important the Grey Cup is and what it means to the people of Canada.
It really didn't hit you till a few days later, and you know, when you get back in Edmonton and you're going to the parade and say, hey, this is kind of a big deal.
The city of Vancouver, on our return, just opened their arms to us. A marvelous thing and very special. There was love here for the BC Lions.
20 below weather, the streets were lined all the way from the airport entrance to City Hall, where they took us back to on buses, and the town just went nuts.
Every team sets out and you want to win the championship. Win the championship. That is a successful season. Anything else isn't successful.
It didn't really hit me after the game. It hit me the next year, seeing that this trophy is going to be forever. Your name's going to be a part of it, and you're going to be associated with the Grey Cup winning team.
Canadian football's eastern roots gave this rugged game at least a touch of refinement. Out west, settlers toughened by hardship and prairie winters reveled in their own bone-crushing version, fought with a ferocity and abandon that turned a simple game into a no-quarter battle.
They just threw money into the pot, and the first one that drew blood got the money. There were a lot of broken bones and broken noses and front teeth missing and that kind of thing. In the first game, Regina played against Saskatoon. Up in Saskatoon, the police chief was so upset with the fact that the Regina team was winning, and he thought they were playing too rough against the Saskatoon boys, that he came on the field and had the Regina team arrested.
In spite of the potential for injury or arrest, football thrived on the Canadian prairie. The Hamilton Tigers became the first team to journey west, playing exhibition games in Winnipeg, Moose Jaw, Regina, and Calgary. While Eastern teams were happy to share the game with the West, sharing their championship trophy was another matter.
Only Eastern teams would play for the Grey Cup, and in 1911, the Calgary Tigers won the championship of the West, and they challenged. They wanted to play in the Grey Cup, and the CRU wouldn't let them. They would turn them down. They said, you didn't play in the East, you can't play challenge for the Grey Cup.
Finally, with great reluctance, the Edmonton Eskimos were allowed to come east in 1921 to challenge Toronto for the right to sip from the Earl's silvered mug. Their timing couldn't have been worse. They ran head-on to the man known as the Big Train, Lionel Conacher.
They ended up losing 23-0 in that game. Conacher, as a matter of fact, scored 15 points and halfway through the third quarter had to leave because he had a hockey game that night.
Hockey and football were just two of the many sports on the Conacher resume. All played so brilliantly that he was named Canada's Athlete of the Half Century. Since 1921, Western teams had marched east for the Grey Cup game, only to fall to the Eastern football powerhouses. In desperation, they cast their eyes not to the heavens, but to the south.
We didn't have the population in the West that they had in the East, so in order to get enough guys, it was we had to supplement them with good, experienced American players from American colleges. And of course, the first, most successful of those teams was the Winnipeg team in 1935.
Winnipeg coach Joe Ryan took a fishing trip to Minnesota and North Dakota that fateful summer of 1935. His bait, money, and he landed his limit. For $7,400, he came home with 9 imports, including the West's first superstar, the incomparable Fritzie Hansen. With Fritzie carrying the mail, the Bombers romped through the West and into the Grey Cup game, where on a muddy field in Hamilton, stunned Easterners got their first look at the little big man from Minnesota.
Fritzie Hansen was an import for Winnipeg, and he was one of these scatbacks that could dangle. And he caught a couple of kicks and ran right through the whole team because nobody had any traction. He had the whole field to himself, and he made the game look easy for Winnipeg, and he made a great name for himself.
In Fritzie and Friends, the Canadian Rugby Union did not see players of great skill. They saw a threat to the very game itself, with teams buying championships and Americans shoving local boys off the roster. Their solution: change the rules.
The CRU decided that they didn't want these American imports coming in specifically to win a competition. So they passed what was called a one-year residency rule. And they said that any American playing in the Grey Cup game had to be in the country for at least 1 year prior to the game.
American imports were now a fact of Canadian football life. Although their numbers increased with the years, they did not destroy the game as the CRU had so darkly predicted. They enhanced it. The Northern League thrived, an alliance that continues to bring great American players to a game that remains distinctly Canadian.
There's something about the Canadian Football League in Canada. It's got a tremendous history about it when you go back and look at some of the great people that have come up here and lived in this country, and they got the opportunity to play. I mean, this is what the game's all about.
It was an opportunity that I was being given that I didn't see happening in my own country. And I really weighed the pros and cons of going to Canada or staying in the United States, and I chose to go to Canada because they were giving me a realistic opportunity to play the game that I love.
I wanted to come play. In the NFL, they would have just used me for, okay, for this and for that. And in Edmonton, I knew I had a chance to do what I wanted to do and play the game.
It put the fun back in football for me. It enabled me to go back out, just be an athlete, play football, and enjoy it. And I'll be forever grateful for that.
During the Depression, there was seldom a penny to spare for children's games. But kids who longed to play football could always find a way.
Nobody had a football, so we'd take somebody's cap, you know the old caps that the kids used to wear, you'll see them in pictures, and stuff it with padding, and so we have no kicking game, so it's a running game only. And that's how we got started.
All our footballs were homemade. We couldn't afford a football. Well, I had something made like a football, made out of a sack or some stuff, sack or a pig's bladder or something like that. But the only time that I ever touched a real football is when I went to high school.
But young boys become young men, and there are real footballs to be thrown and real games to be played. As a pastime becomes a passion, a game becomes a way of life. Though the stakes grow higher and the win's more important, it all comes down to a simple love of the game.
Canadian football was plain,
old-fashioned mayhem. You played it, in my day, you played it because you loved the game.
The players didn't make any money. And so they all held jobs. Stukas worked for the Star. And as a football writer, well, at the time he was playing, which he certainly gave himself the benefit of the doubt in his stories, Stukas tells the story of playing for the Argonauts when they won the Grey Cup, I think it was 1938, and all he got for it was a windbreaker. He says a really nice windbreaker.
Though the players weren't making any money, they could see by the crowds paying their way into the parks that someone was. They decided it was time they got a piece of the pie. The man the Toronto Argonauts picked to plead their case, Annis Stukas. Management was quick to respond.
How dare this goddamn football player ask for money? We let them play. We give them great uniforms. We go to the best hotels when we go out of towns. Holy mackerel, and now the guy wants money?
Playing football in Canada was an uncertain profession at best, but the harsh Canadian winter was a virtual guarantee.
I used to die in the cold because you have the lighter uniforms on, so every time you hit the ground, you took a chunk out of your hide. You literally did take a chunk out of your body. And the most painful thing I had to do that day was take a shower. It was so painful to get in that water.
In our first game, the referee had to stand under the goalpost. It was snowing so hard to see if the ball was going through on field goals and extra points. And I'm saying, what did I get myself into here? I'm cold.
Football was a daylight game. If dusk fell before the final gun, finishing the contest required a little help from the crowd.
Fans were urged to park their cars along the sidelines because if the game got going too long, then what would happen was that they'd turn the lights on from their cars and play it out that particular way.
We were playing a game in Ottawa, and we played the last 10 minutes of that game, or 5 minutes of that game, under headlights. They got the people to turn their headlights on in the cars, and that's how we finished the game.
By the 1930s, football had been in Canada for better than a half-century, and still the game looked a lot like rugby. The forward pass had found its way into the rule book, but not everyone cared or dared to use it.
The kicking was the essence of the game. What the guys did is that they punted the ball and then ran down underneath it. As the forward pass came in around 1930, there were different rules. For example, if a pass was incomplete, it was a fumble, and so it was used very judiciously.
The man who changed all that was Warren Stevens. In 1931, he threw the Grey Cup's first touchdown pass in Montreal's 22-0 win over Regina. But change requires time. While the forward pass could be a quick and devastating weapon when successful, throwing the ball was still no simple matter.
To be honest with you, we didn't throw that many passes as they do today. The darn balls, they were almost like a soccer ball. It was very difficult to grab a hold of the darn thing, so you laid it on the palm of your hand and threw it. In other words, you didn't grip it.
Well, the ball we used was relatively primitive because it wasn't dimpled to enable the quarterback to grasp it easier. And when I look at it, I can't believe the size and the shape compared to how it is today.
Pass, run, or kick, the name of the game was hitting, and the padding offered little protection.
The equipment I used, people would laugh at. What you got when you went up with the big team was secondhand furniture. At training camp, the new guys coming in took old-timers' equipment from a year, 2 years past. And if the shoes were a size too big, tough luck, wear them.
The post-war years were a boom time for Canadian football. In 1948, the Calgary Stampeders galloped through the three-team West as they recorded the only undefeated season in league history. Heading east, the 4-day train trip became a traveling party as the Stampeders made the cross-country trek to the Grey Cup game. Arriving with Stetson-topped fans, Indian chiefs, chuck wagons, and horses, the Stampeders didn't just come from the West, they brought the West with them.
The 1948 Grey Cup game was pivotal in turning a celebration into a national festival. The Calgary Stampeders brought their chuck wagons, loaded them on the train. They had flapjack breakfasts. They had horses parading through hotel lobbies. It gave it another dimension. And from that time on, I think almost every Grey Cup game has been measured by what happened in 1948.
The Stampeders did more than defeat the Ottawa Rough Riders 12-7. Their victory and their fans' Western exuberance turned a 3-hour showdown into a week-long hoedown, and the party has never stopped. Grey Cup Day has become Grey Cup Week. A game once of regional interest is now a national obsession. And so, the story of the modern-day CFL begins. It is the story of a league often battered but never down, of a game that is an important thread in the Canadian cultural fabric, a game that is ours and ours alone.
Canadian football is something I was brought up on. I love the game because it's quick. It has always allowed the quarterback to be able to run with the ball, and I thoroughly enjoyed that challenge.
The excitement in the game, in a Canadian football game, with the 3 downs, with the wider field, with the kick return, it may be the best game in the world to watch on television.
It's so fast, it's so wide open, and I think it speaks to my personality. It's sort of a living on the edge type of football game.
It's exciting. You're never out of a ball game in the Canadian Football League. And as a quarterback, that's all you want is a chance. You want to have the ball in your hands with 1 minute to play and give your team a chance to win the ball game.
The Canadian Football League is arguably the most significant cultural institution in the country as it relates to bringing cities across the country together.
It's the one thing, the one professional sport that we have left that we can say is purely Canadian. It's the only one.
Canadian football is a magic show, a century-old spectacle, grown men battling to cross a line drawn in the dirt. It is a game filled with heroes, great players and great teams, bringing championship pride to their faithful fans. The field is a battleground where skill and determination are the tools of the trade. It is a game that has grabbed the nation by the heart. An annual struggle becomes an epic battle as teams fight for the ultimate glory, the chance to hold the Grey Cup and become forever known as a champion. In the city of Montreal in the mid-1800s, it was on the campus of McGill University where Canadian football found its first home. Before the century was through, the game had moved from the campus and into towns and cities across the province. Athletes from every walk of life embraced this great new game, and ever-growing crowds made heroes of the men and boys who took to the field. In 1931, quarterback Warren Stevens made football history when he threw the first touchdown pass in a Grey Cup game, as he led Montreal to a 22-0 victory over Regina. While that was Montreal's first Grey Cup, the city had already seen more than a few football teams come and go.
Montreal went through a whole raft of names. When they first won the Grey Cup in 1931, they were known as the Winged Wheelers. And then they, over time, they had the Cubs and the Hornets and the Royals, and different names were tried. And it was in 1946 when Lou Heyman and Eric Craddock took over the Montreal club, and they picked the name Alouettes.
The Alouettes were an immediate success. In 1949, they captured the East before facing the defending champion Calgary Stampeders in the Grey Cup game. On a frozen field in Toronto's Varsity Stadium, flinging Frankie Filchuk was a star on both sides of the ball. His strong arm led the offensive attack, and on defense, he recorded an amazing 3 interceptions as the Als romped to a 28-15 victory. Everyone loves a winner, and Montreal loved the Alouettes.
We were, I guess, almost the team of the city. We certainly pushed the Canadiens for the team of choice. We were a team that had tremendous support from the city itself.
I was really impressed with the city. I was impressed with the nightlife. I was impressed with the day life. But we were getting good crowds, and if you were a football player in Montreal and you walked down the streets, some of them would recognize you as being a football player.
Through the 50s, the Alouettes rode another golden arm to glory. The man who came to define the franchise, Sam the Rifle Etcheverry.
What a wonderful passer he was. And reportedly, Lou Heyman got him out of a football book magazine. He was looking through a football magazine one day and saw this picture of Etcheverry and ended up signing him.
I didn't know anything about Canadian football. It just so happened that the University of Denver had a hockey team, and there was hockey players there from Canada, and especially Montreal. And so I went to them and asked them questions about the Canadian Football League.
In Montreal, Etcheverry learned the Canadian game from Douglas P-Head Walker, a coach who did things his own way.
We never had a playbook. P-Head Walker put the plays in training camp, and we ran them every day. Whenever he decided to put in a new play, he would line us up and he'd go through it. So we just learned by memory.
But no one had to coach the Rifle on throwing a football. As a rookie, he became the finest passer in the game.
He was the quarterback in Canada, bar none. He could throw the ball with any of them, probably better than any of them. He could run, and he'd fight you tooth and nail right to the end of the game.
To kids, Etcheverry was both hero and inspiration.
We were playing this game, and all of a sudden this guy came along. And he said, "Hey kid, you want to learn how to throw a football?" So he shows me how to put my hand just right, and all of a sudden I throw this ball, and it actually worked. And he's walking away, and these guys say, "Do you know who that was?" And they said, "That was Sam Etcheverry." And I swear to God, that's the instant that I had to play this game.
In 1954, to complement a magic arm, the Alouettes found a pair of magic hands, Prince Hal Patterson.
I thought Hal Patterson was one of the greatest football players I've ever seen, you know, in pure talent. We'd go on the field, and Patterson would go out there. We wouldn't see him till the end of the game because he was on all the teams, offense, defense, punt returns, kickoff returns, whatever you had, punting team, punt cover.
He was an outstanding receiver, and you know, he was big, he was very, very fast, and had great hands. He's maybe as good a receiver as I've ever seen.
Hal Patterson was the greatest I've ever played with. To this day, I don't find anybody comparable.
In 1954, the Alouettes laid waste to the Eastern Conference. As the Owls took to the field for the Grey Cup game, Coach P. Head Walker and quarterback Sam Echeverry seemed an unbeatable combination.
Edmonton, of course, had been the prohibitive underdog, and Montreal was supposed to just wallop them. And when a team is that big an underdog, that always sort of attracts some attention.
We went into that 1954 game, read all the press clippings about the Montreal Alouette team, and saw Red O'Quinn, saw Echeverry, saw Hal Patterson. I wondered anyway how we'd ever beat them.
The powerful Montreal offense lived up to their reputation, but Edmonton and their great rookie Jackie Parker continued to battle back. Although playing with an injured shoulder, Parker's clutch plays kept the game in reach. Holding a 5-point lead in the dying minutes of the game, Echeverry put the Owls in scoring position. Victory seemed a certainty as Echeverry called a handoff to running back Chuck Hunsinger.
Called an off-tackle play to the left with Hunsinger carrying the ball from the right halfback spot. And anyway, he handed the ball off to Chuck, and he was tackled at the ankles.
The first thing I heard was the roar of the crowd, and the next thing I saw was Jackie running down all by himself through to the Montreal goal line.
Parker's 90-yard run led Edmonton to an upset victory, but Montreal players insist that the game wasn't lost, but stolen.
I will always say that it was not a fumble. It was an illegal forward pass, and I'll believe that for the rest of my life.
I still to this day maintain that that was not a fumble but a forward pass, and that it should have been called back, and we should have won the game, but I can't rewrite the book.
In 1955, Vancouver hosted a Montreal-Edmonton Grey Cup rematch, but Normie Kwong and the defending champion Eskimos were now an even stronger team. While the Rifles set passing records, it was Edmonton who put the points on the board as they recorded a 34-19 victory.
Sam Echeverry threw for over 500 yards in that game, and yet they lost the game by a decided margin because the Eskimos were huge defensively, and you could rack up big yardage between the 20-yard lines. But you try to beat that defense from the 20-yard line in, you had big problems.
We were a passing team, and we could score very quickly when we had the ball. But against Edmonton, they were a control-type offense, and they rolled the ball on the ground, they threw little short passes, and they maintained possession.
1956 brought a third consecutive Montreal-Edmonton Grey Cup matchup, but this time it was no contest. Although Echeverry continued to rack up the yardage, the Eskimos' defense never faltered. A 50-27 victory made it 3 in a row for the Eskimos, the West's first dynasty. Unable to recover from 3 consecutive Grey Cup losses, the Alouettes began to struggle. In 1960, management did the unthinkable.
I was traded to Hamilton, and I refused to go. I said, I'm a free agent. I have a no-cut contract, and you just violated my contract. And of course, they didn't fight it. And so I signed with the Cardinals then.
In sharp contrast to the team that had once dominated the East, the Alouettes of the 60s struggled. In 1970, management made an attempt to recapture the team's past glory and enlisted Sam Echeverry as the Owls' new head coach. The Rifle proved to be the right choice as he led the third-place Owls to the Eastern Championship and on to the Grey Cup.
What a Cinderella year that was. The 1970 Grey Cup was unbelievable. We had 24 new players out of a 32-man roster and a lot of rookies. And somehow we came together. And the one thing we did, we stuck together as a team and we played hard all the time. And good things happened.
With quarterback Sonny Wade guiding the offense, the Owls hoped to conquer both the Stampeders and the horrible field conditions.
It was a deal where the 2 third-place teams actually ended up playing each other, maybe for the first time, I don't know. But The turf was very poor and very loose, and every time you took a step on the field, you took some of the turf with you.
I remember Sonny Wade picking up big chunks of turf and just laying them back out there and stomping on them and leveling it off. It was pretty soggy, but you know, when you're a player, you really don't see that. You just play the game.
While Wade's game was without the flash of Sam the Rifle Echeverry's aerial assault, his short passing, ball control game accomplished what the airborne Als of the 50s had never done. Montreal won the mud-spattered final 23-10, and Sam Echeverry had, as a coach, what had eluded him 3 times as a player, a Grey Cup championship. As a coach, Sam Echeverry never saw eye to eye with management, and the Rifle resigned after the 1972 season. His replacement, Marv Levy, a coach whose meticulous approach won instant respect.
As soon as Marv Levy got here, it was like he knew what it took to win games. He provided a stability, he provided a sort of an intellectual basis for it. He told people what he was going to do and what was important and how to get it done. I don't know if coaches didn't do that before, but history has shown that he had the right answers.
Marv took about 8 of us in a room and said, if you guys play hard, you'll play here as long as you want. Well, no one had ever told me that that could possibly happen to me, so as a youngster, you could imagine how euphoric I really was. But Marv created trust, and we all trusted Marv, and we all played hard for Marv.
He changed a lot of things about how we did things. Marv was very professional, very well organized, you know, and very methodical in how he operated. He surrounded himself, you know, with good people, had a good scouting system in the States, and, you know, eventually brought some very, very good players.
One of the greatest to don an Alouettes uniform was Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Rodgers. Colorful and controversial, the self-proclaimed ordinary superstar lit up the field like none other.
He came in with flair, pomp, extravagance, attitude. He was exactly what the CFL needed, and I have no complaints. Johnny Rodgers played hard in practice and on the field.
Johnny was such a dynamic runner. He was so electrifying in the fact that he was so quick and whatever. He had exciting moves that, yeah, he opened up the punt return and made everyone realize what a weapon, you know, the kicking game is.
Johnny was a great guy, great team player, tough, and for that 4-year period he was with the Alouettes, he was a superstar and added a lot of excitement to the CFL.
In 1974, Rodgers sparked the Alouettes to another Grey Cup meeting with the Eskimos in rain-swept Vancouver, where history made them underdogs.
We had a good veteran team that had, you know, kind of grown up together under Marv Levy, and, you know, when we went to the game, we were, I guess, lucky to be here, and, you know, but we in our own minds felt, you know, that we could get the job done.
Got my first real taste of Vancouver weather because we were there for the whole week, and I don't think the sun didn't shine one day, and I think it rained literally every day for 7 days.
We played in the old P&A Stadium, Empire Stadium out there, and it was poured rain. If you fell and slid on your back, you'd go 20 yards. It was really terrible conditions.
Despite the slippery turf, Don Sweet was the hero of the day as he kicked a record 4 field goals in a 20-7 triumph. And Marv Levy's Alouettes celebrated a Grey Cup victory. The following season, the Als again faced the Eskimos in the Grey Cup game. In the numbing Calgary chill, kicker Don Sweet learned how fleeting fame can be.
We were in a dogfight out in Calgary, probably the coldest game I've ever played in. 30-mile-an-hour winds, minus 10 or 15. It was unbelievable how cold it was. We had played a great defensive game, and it was 9-7 with a minute to go in the game.
A deep pass from quarterback Sonny Wade put Montreal into scoring position. With the ball in the Edmonton 11-yard line, the ever-reliable Don Sweet was called in for the game-winning field goal. But as the Alouettes looked on, a mishandled snap changed the outcome of the game.
It was high enough, but it was about a foot wide. And I watched, and there was dead silence, dead silence. And we just didn't say a thing on the bench, not a thing. Like, we can't believe that just happened. And within about 5 seconds, you realize that is the game. It's 9-8. We lost.
But better times were in store for the Alouettes. In 1976, the team moved into Olympic Stadium, and the crowds flocked to the new sports palace.
We averaged over 50,000 people a game in that stadium. So the stadium was a real drawing point. The team was obviously good at the time. And, people started to follow, and the Francophone community started to get on board.
They always said the Big O was kind of cold because it's got so much concrete and whatever, but I tell you what, when it's packed with 60,000 people, it's a pretty warm place.
It was the Alouettes and Eskimos again in the '77 Grey Cup game, this time in Olympic Stadium. Despite snow, cold, and a transit strike, the place was packed. On a field more suited for hockey than football, it was a staple gun that stole the headlines.
I said to the players, now make sure that you get the right shoes this week so that you're not slipping, because that field will probably be frozen. And I never thought anything of it again. But when I went into the locker room that day of the game, I thought I was in a shoemaker's store.
All week long, we had been struggling with footwear because of the ice and everything. We tried a number of things, and it wasn't until just before the game, in fact, in the warm-up, that I noticed the Bell telephone worker with a staple gun in his hand. And it just clicked on me. I said, hey, that's what I could use.
It did give you traction, but I think what it gave us is a sense of confidence that we had our footing. And it was a hell of an experience. Again, it was so cold. There was so much snow. The fans were going crazy that it's one of those blurs that becomes part of a memory.
The Alouettes dominated the slipping, stumbling Eskimos 41-6 in what would forever be known as the staple gun game. Whether the staples provided better traction or simply a psychological advantage, the Alouettes didn't care. They were hoisting another Grey Cup. In 1978, Joe Scannella took over head coaching duties with the Alouettes. Despite reaching the next 2 Grey Cup games, questionable management decisions and changes in ownership alienated players and fans alike.
You know, all of a sudden, things change, and a great franchise started to go, in the wrong direction. Poor decisions were being made, and a once proud franchise that was getting in this middle 60,000 people to a game was now at the point of folding.
In 1982, the Alouettes would indeed fold. Renamed the Concorde, the team continued to struggle. In 1986, a return to the Alouettes name did little to revive fan interest, and the lights went out in the Big O. 10 years later, the CFL's American experiment had ended. The powerful Baltimore Stallions were suddenly a team in search of a home. With nothing more than a change in name, the Alouettes were back in Montreal.
I've been around the Canadian Football League so long that I've watched Montreal in the 70s when the Big O was rocking with 60,000 people. They had 67,000 at a Grey Cup with the Eskimos, so I've seen Montreal at its best. When Baltimore moved to Montreal and we went to the Big O again and 5,000 people showed up for the games, I didn't think Montreal was a viable market. And all of a sudden, because of a rock concert that was taking place in the Big O, Montreal was forced to shift its game downtown.
We went to Molson Stadium. You should have seen Molson Stadium. It was terrible. It was dilapidated, part of the stands falling down. We said, well, if we cover it with a tarpaulin and we get to play, it's going to be fantastic. During the first quarter of that game, we were panicking because until 7 minutes into the first quarter, hardly anybody was there, but there was a traffic problem. By the end of the first quarter, 17,000 people going crazy.
It was just remarkable. The downtown core of people embraced the team. They started filling the stadium. It holds 20,000, and we now have a record number of sellouts in a row.
I think going back to the old stadium has really created an enthusiasm for football in the province. And when you look around at the crowds at Molson Stadium on a Friday night or a Wednesday night or a Sunday afternoon, it is just a wonderful mix of people.
In 2002, the reborn Alouettes were again in the Grey Cup game. In Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium, they faced their #1 rival, the Eskimos. MVP quarterback Anthony Calvillo's powerful passing game led the Owls to an emotional 25-16 victory. And so the Montreal Alouettes are more than back in business. They have again raised the Grey Cup in victory and captured the hearts of sports fans throughout the province of Quebec.
This city deserved it, the fans deserved it, the team deserved it, the players, coaches, everybody. But the city of Montreal, and really the province of Quebec, deserved it. And to come back to the city, and they threw an impromptu parade, you couldn't have got more people out.
Over 250,000 people lined the streets to watch our parade. It was like something I have never witnessed in my life. And the message that the Quebec people were giving us was, thank you. Thank you for bringing the cup back to Montreal.
Well, the first time I went with the Alouettes, I had an early association. My grade 7 teacher was Ray Bailey, who had played for the Alouettes. The Bailey brothers, Charlie Bailey, Ray Bailey, and Dave Bailey. Charlie Bailey was a longtime coach at McGill University, but Ray Bailey was my grade 7 elementary school teacher who played the defensive line, and that got me interested when I was 12. And I used to go to the games throughout the 60s. And following such great stars as Don Clark and George Dixon in the backfield.
Probably the earliest memories of football was, sitting in a park in Montreal North, just coming out of Shawbridge Boys Farm, which was a detention home. My brother and I were just kind of hanging out with our leather jackets, and a fellow named Alpha Neff, who later on played with the Montreal Alouettes, was coaching a peewee team. And I guess he had seen us kind of hanging out at the park, and he came over and said, would you guys like to play football? I believe that it was a tremendous opportunity for both my brother and myself, to get involved in something that we were going to enjoy for a lifetime. And I think also it gave us direction for our life.
I just could never see myself being anything other than an Alouette. My dream when I was a child is I watched George Dixon and Don Clark, who I thought were the two greatest backs that the Alouettes ever had. And what I wanted to be was George Dixon. And it was interesting, when I played at Bishops, George Dixon was the coach of Loyola, the Warriors, and my parents used to go crazy because he'd be saying, kill Smith, because I used to run the ball 30 times a game at Bishops with Bruce Coulter. And it was odd that 2 years later I ended up playing for the Alouettes, and George Dixon, who wrote for the Gazette at the time, was actually a fan, and I thought that was kind of neat.
Junior, are you aggressive, quiet, a person that you will know where he is on the field at all times if you're a smart quarterback? Because I always wanted Junior in my face. I wanted to have the opportunity to dodge him if he did get away. I didn't want him behind me. I didn't want him at my back, because he was so good and so fast that it didn't take long for him to get back there and crunch you. I mean, he was an aggressive player, not a dirty player, but he could injure you.
Just struck fear in the quarterback eyes. I think anytime Junior was over there on the other side of the ball, I think they were worried that Junior was going to get him. He had a great career. He played, I think, around 10 years too. A Hall of Famer, just a great guy.
And he fooled a lot of people. Everybody thought he was like about 6'3", about 260, and that 270, but Junior was only about 230, and but great ability. And Junior was a real mild-mannered guy.
Junior Ayu is a guy who brings back memories of pain for me because I had to play head up against him when I was in my second year in Hamilton, and I was just physically unmatched against him, and he taught me a lesson.
I was drafted by Montreal in 1971. Jay Albrecht was the GM at the time, and I was quite excited. I was their first draft pick. I thought it was hot stuff. I was a linebacker. I figured, oh, this is great. So he sent me a contract down in the mail, and I took a look at it and said, well, maybe I'll ask for a bonus. I wrote back and said, can I have a $500 bonus? He picks up the phone the next day. He says, Proudfoot, you show up at that Fredericton Airport 11 o'clock tomorrow. You sign the contract or you'll never play in a CFL again. My first introduction to Jay Albrecht.
You know, my first training camp was quite an experience, staying at the Autostat Hilton, and I think everybody will think that we're in a high-rise hotel, but in actuality, what it was work trailers that were put on the parking lot, you know, around the Autostat. And, you know, coming from U.S. college, you know, we would have thought that professional sports, you know, would be just a little bit more upscale than that, but it wasn't.
We kind of stayed in construction-type trailers. That was our living quarters. And we had to go up to the concession stands and use the bathroom and all that type of stuff. And obviously I didn't know that until I got there. So it was a big shock to come from South Carolina going pro and all of a sudden kind of going back to like, holy mackerel, what's going on, eh?
The food was shaky too, you know. Everything was a mess, really, you know, because you have to go into the stadium, and I guess they were cutting corners and they were trying to do anything to save a buck and just to get by and get training camp by and get the season going.
There was a meat packing plant, I remember, and all the flies used to just hang around. We usually had to kill about 20 or 30 flies a night before we get to sleep, you know, because they'd land on you. And we get up in the morning, we go for breakfast, and it was in the Autostat there in a little kitchen. They had just small kitchen. They had like 1 or 2 cooks, and here we had like 100 guys in camp. And the cook would just be screaming and yelling, and the smoke would be coming up. He'd be burning things, and guys, you know, 100 guys trying to eat, and like 1 or 2 cooks there. It was quite funny, actually.
When the wind blew a certain way in Canada Packers, all you'd hear is and all of a sudden, ding! And it was an unbelievable, wretched smell that even the fans were offended when they came in the stadium and the meat packing plant was operational and that wind blew the wrong way. It was terrible.
Oh, yeah. I actually had a friend that came up from South Carolina, and he was there for a week, and I knew he wasn't going to make it, but he says, Harris, he says, I'm getting out of here. And I was begging him, like, don't leave me here by myself.
I'm a rookie, 1972. Bob Gary comes in, and this stadium leaked. The carpet smelled. It was an unbelievable place. And Bob said, we're going to take care of you guys. I said, Bob, what are you going to do? He said, we're going to buy a carpet for the shower. I said, Bob, don't you think we'll get athletes' foot if you buy a carpet for the shower? Oh, you damn Canadians, you're so spoiled. I'm going to do it anyway. And what was interesting was Bob bought a carpet for the shower. Within 3 weeks, everybody in the team had the worst case of athlete's foot you'd ever seen. Bob swore, took the carpet out. We never saw the carpet again. That was a hell of a funny situation. It's funny after, it's not so funny at the time because your feet are very sore, but when you look back at it, it really is quite amusing.
You know, but like anything, you know, athletes, you know, can endure and, you know, they overlook all those things because they want to play football. And, you know, my first training camp, like I said, was, you know, was quite an experience, but I think it also made you appreciate things when they got more professional.
When Don Sweet missed the field goal in 1975, I was the wing back on the right side of the field. I just bought a car, and the difference between winning and losing was going on GMAC finance for 3 years. Don was automatic. So I said, all right, no more GMC for 3 years. When he missed it, it was like numb. I was numb. I couldn't believe it. And what was really frustrating was after the game, some of the press guys came up and said, Larry, guess what? If you'd won the game, the Alouettes had won the game, you would have been the Canadian, most valuable Canadian. I said, what did you tell me that for? We lost. Oh, just thought you'd like to know. So it was kind of a numbing experience. Losing is never fun, but it was a numbing experience. All 3 losses for me in the Grey Cup, I just said, what a waste of time. We shouldn't have played.
Montreal and Ottawa were big city rivalries. The busloads used to come down from Montreal to Ottawa to watch the football games, and vice versa, and even used to go on the train back and forth down to Montreal to watch the football games. And I think that rivalry is still going. I think it's still stands.
We played Ottawa 5 times one year. Exhibition game, 4 regular season games and a playoff game. We always played Ottawa, always. And we knew by the late 70s that you had to beat Ottawa in the final to get to the Grey Cup. This was going into training camp. It wasn't to say Toronto or Hamilton weren't any good, but Ottawa was our rival.
It was unique because Montreal in those years had great defensive teams and personnel, and we had great offensive teams and personnel. And we both had great kickers. We had Jerry Organ, they had Don Sweet, and it was just a really good matchup.
We hated Ottawa. They hated the Alouettes. After the game, of course, 6 months after you talk to the folks, but I never talked to an Ottawa player while I was playing. During that 9-year career, I would never talk to an Ottawa player. I hated them. And I was mad at anyone who talked to an Ottawa player.
You know what? I've never talked to Tony Gabriel. Never. I've been to a couple roasts with him afterwards and things, in the 80s and things like that. I've never talked to him. I didn't want to talk to him. He was the enemy. He was Ottawa. He represented Ottawa. We were tooth and nail at that time. I guess I wasn't a very big person at the time. I couldn't get over that.
Remember, the 5 times we went to the Grey Cup, I think it was at the expense of the Ottawa Rough Riders. So a lot of those boys were a little frustrated they didn't get that bonus money. Many of them told us that after we retired. You guys took our bonus money.
I remember borrowing the Grey Cup, I would say, from Sam Berger. Sam Berger, the owner at the time, we were staying down at the, I can't remember the name of it, the Bayshore. We're staying at the Bayshore, and Sam Berger had the Grey Cup in his room. And we were on the same hall, and I had a bunch of friends in my room, and we were having a good time. This is quite late at night. So I said, I know what I need to do. So I go to Sam Berger's room and just take the Grey Cup and bring it back. And nobody even noticed me. I had it in my room, and I had about a dozen friends in there. And we filled it up. Usually you fill it up with champagne, but for some reason I just had tequila or something. So I filled it up with tequila, and we spent about an hour or 2 hours enjoying the Grey Cup in the room. And it was a great feeling. Those are very strong memories from that 74 team. But I have a better story about the Grey Cup. In 77, when we won it, that we made a concerted effort to get it this time. And we said, we won the Grey Cup. We have to share it with the fans. Chuck Zapek again, Dan Yoakum, Mike Widger, and Ted Blackman. We go down to the hotel where it stayed, and this was a different setup. This was set up on a big podium, a special thing. This was a VIP suite, and said, we need a diversion to get this out of here. Chuck Zapek, I'll do that. He goes over, and he pushes somebody onto the table of hors d'oeuvres and everything. The table flies. I mean, this is a big fiasco because everybody turns around to watch what's happening over the thing. We put a coat over it and out the door. And we took it down to Crescent Street, which is obviously a famous watering hole, and we go to the Winston Churchill pub, which is a pub that most of the players used to hang out at. And we had it in there for 3 or 4 hours, and people continuously filled it up with champagne, and we gave everybody drinks, and it was an amazing thing. And I remember bringing the back out at 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm dragging the cup along St. Catherine Street. I'm too tired to lift it by that time. There's snowbanks all around, and Gabby Mancini, who was, I think, O'Keefe rep at the time, who was responsible for the Grey Cup. He's looking for it, right, for the last number of hours. And he finally sees me with it and spots it, and he's so relieved. We get it back, and thanks, we take it away from me before I do any more damage to it. But we had a ball with that cup for 3 or 4 hours, and we certainly shared it with the fans. We had it in the Toronto airport, and everybody was so hungover and exhausted. They're just sitting with me, you know. I'm sitting on this chair, and they're sitting beside me, and I'm starting to look at it, and everybody's walking by. It is like, is that the Grey Cup? It's just sitting there with that guy over there. What is going on? And it's taken some abuse. There's lots of dents and nicks and bumps into it. It's part of the history, right? It's Canada. It's not so special. It's not like in a glass case anywhere. It's just, you know, it's almost a trophy for the people. The people have identified with that for a long, long time.
I think Quebec is back as far as the football goes in a big way. I think it was always there, but obviously it's had its ups and downs. I think what happened in Montreal when the franchise folded and things that happened there, obviously football was down for many years, but it's certainly back in a big way.
I've been in Montreal since 1953. I was born in Winnipeg, but I've lived in Montreal since '53, and my awareness, early awareness, is all the way up until I started playing, was that it was a very Anglophone game. I played high school here. Every Anglophone high school played football in the province. Almost no Francophone schools played.
What evolved in Montreal during the 90s was this phenomena of amateur football with Francophones, which did not exist in the 70s. Francophones have taken over football. They've gone from 200 programs when we started in 1997 to over 350 programs by 2002. Phenomenal growth. You now have 6 universities in Quebec that plays football, including now University of Montreal, which quit when I was playing at Bishop's in 1969. And then you've added Laval, plus now University of Sherbrooke, Concordia, Bishop's, and who else do we have? McGill. 6 major teams in this province. It's unbelievable to see the growth of amateur football. It's fueled all by Francophones. That's the difference. In the 70s, mainly English, a few Francophones. Now, English, but a huge group of Francophones.
Quebec City really is probably the biggest hotbed outside of Montreal, and it's shown by the University of Laval's Rouge et Or football team. They've only been in operation for 5 years, but they've won a national championship. They, last year, I think, averaged about 15,000 fans in a 10,000-seat stadium, averaged. And it's a very big, well-run organization. They have a lot of corporate money in there, so it's a real model. A lot of universities are trying to copy. But if you can get 15,000 to 20,000 fans out to watch a university game in Quebec, there's got to be indicators that they might support a CFL team.
Will this phenomena of football interest in Quebec survive? The answer to the question is that there's a tremendous base. The amateur programs have never been stronger. It's all with Francophones. These are kids now playing, so there's at least a generation or two that will benefit from this growth, so that if the club itself manages its relationships with the community properly and has a competitive team, there's absolutely no reason why it will not survive and flourish.
Since the Alouettes have returned and they've had success at Molson Stadium, you wouldn't believe the interest in football in that province. I mean, I think that's where the players are coming from, and I do believe that they are absolutely in love with this game of football, Canadian football, in Quebec these days.
Mike Pringle is a legend. I had Mike Pringle for the 2 years that he was in Baltimore, and there's a funny story involved in how Mike Pringle came to the Baltimore franchise. I was the head coach of Baltimore, and Kay Stevenson was the head coach of Sacramento, where Mike Pringle was playing, and I called Kay for a trade for a slot back that I wanted that used to play for the Washington Redskins. And he said, well, I will trade you that guy, but only under the condition that you take this running back that I have that's a great special teamer and a backup named Mike Pringle. If you will also take him and just give him a shot, you won't be disappointed. He's a great special teams player. And I said, well, I'm really loaded at running back. He said, the only way you get the slot back is if you also take Mike Pringle. I said, send him along. And Mike Pringle, when he came to us, I'm not a genius either, because I started a different running back the first game, started Mike the second, the different running back, the third. Mike Pringle had a breakout game in the fourth game, and he is now a Hall of Fame guy that is a legend.
Mike Pringle was the toughest running back I ever played against, and because even when you talk about tough running backs, to me the toughest ones are the guys that when you know what they're going to do, you're ready for the hit, you lower yourself, you prepare for it, and they still run over you. Those are the running backs that can run when everybody knows they're running, that run over you when everyone knows that's what they're going to do, that are the tough ones. And Mike Pringle, he was impossible to bring down.
Like a piece of steel. He is so tough. It's unbelievable. He'll come back. Yeah, I think he played after arthroscopic knee surgery. I think he played the next week. You cannot keep him off the field. He is tough. He reminds me a lot of another back I played against, Larry Key, out in BC. A really tough, small guy who would love to hit you rather than run around you. So Mike Pringle, I played against George Reed, the other all-time greatest back, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't have liked to play it against, I didn't enjoy playing against George Reed, and I wouldn't have enjoyed playing against Mike Pringle. He'd hurt you.
Well, imagine, here we are, it's playoff time, 1997, and the issue is where we're going to play the game. 1 week before the game, I get a call from Andre Tetreault, who's the head of the Olympic Installation Board. He goes, "Larry." I say, "Andre." I go, "Andre, how are you?" "Ça va mal." I said, "What do you mean it's going badly?" "I got the problem." I said, "What problem do you have?" He goes, "You too." I go, "Me too?" He goes, No, soyez sérieux, be serious." He said, "You too." I said, "What's U2?" He said, "A rock band. I've leased the stadium to U2." And I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "The problem is you're not playing here next week." I said, "Where are we going to play?" He said, "That's the problem." And so effectively what we did is we went to Molson Stadium. You should have seen Molson Stadium. It was terrible. It was dilapidated, part of the stands falling down. We said, well, if we cover it with a tarpaulin and we get to play, it's going to be fantastic. During the first quarter of that game, we were panicking because until 7 minutes into the first quarter, hardly anybody was there, but there was a traffic problem. By the end of the first quarter, 17,000 people going crazy. I looked at Bob Wettenhall and said, "This is it." From there on, we were successful. What happened is that people had so much fun having a beer, watching the game, and looking at Montreal that it became a social event. In Quebec, the number one purchasing criteria for Quebecers is to have fun. So what we did is we took that having fun and translated it into an experience in stadium. Plus, we found 10 or 15 people who were fans, gave them sweaters. They put glasses on their head, they drink and paint their faces and go crazy, and suddenly that started multiplying. We don't pay a thing for that entertainment. It's all part of the ambience of the stadium. And so what happened was this became truly a social event inside a sporting event. And that's really the success formula for the program.
When I think about the 2002 Grey Cup game, you have flashbacks of when you played and when you won and how great it was and the feeling you had and everything. And I was just so proud for the city. I mean, I'm a Montreal diehard fan, true and blue. Even though I live out here in BC now and make my home out here, the Alouettes are number one in my heart and always will be. So it was just a great thrill for me to see, and a great thrill for the fans, because I think they've waited a long time again and have really supported the team. And when you have that type of support, you really like to pay your fans back.
This city deserved it. The fans deserved it. The team deserved it. The players, coaches, everybody. But the city of Montreal, and really the province of Quebec, deserved it. It's been a long time, 25 years since that 77 Grey Cup, since they've won it.
It's great to see that they won, and they finally, it was kind of a relief for me. It was anyway, saying, hey, we finally won. They can forget about the 77 team that they always talked about, which was the last year that the Alouettes have won the Grey Cup, and now they can continue on and do their thing in their own era.
Oh, it was such a thrill for me. And to come back to the city, and they threw an impromptu parade. They said, just a little short parade. They said, we'll just go from here to there and we'll have a little halftime speech. You couldn't have got more people out. There was no more room for anybody to be involved. Hundreds of thousands of people came out, and the players were so impressed that this happened spontaneously at a lunch hour 2 days after they got back. They really made a big difference, and it showed me that the fans are here. They love the game, they support the team, and it really gave me a great, warm, goosebump feelings that football in Montreal and my history of football like that is still going strong. You know?
The ultimate goal in Canadian football is the Grey Cup. Since 1946, the Montreal Alouettes have experienced the euphoria of capturing the national championship 5 times. In just their 3rd season of existence, the Montreal Alouettes found themselves challenging for the Grey Cup against the defending champion, Calgary Stampeders. On the snowy tundra of Toronto's Varsity Stadium, Alouette superstar Frank Filchak dominated on both sides of the ball. At quarterback, he threw for 220 yards, and on defense, he recorded 3 interceptions. Filchak's amazing performance, combined with Virgil Wagner's 2 touchdowns, led the Montreal Alouettes to a 28-15 victory for their first ever Grey Cup championship in franchise history. From 1954 to 1956, the Montreal Alouettes would battle the Edmonton Eskimos 3 times for the Grey Cup. In their first meeting, Montreal appeared to be on their way to victory, but late in the 4th quarter, with the Alouettes in scoring position, disaster struck. On a running play, Chuck Hunsinger fumbled, and the ball was scooped up by Jackie Parker, who ran it back for a 90-yard touchdown. The 1955 and 56 Grey Cup featured a stronger Edmonton team as they defeated the Alouettes in both games with authority. In 1970, a football icon returned to the Alouettes as Sam Echeverry was named head coach. In his first year, the Rifle guided the Alouettes out of the East for a shot at the Grey Cup. On Grey Cup Sunday, Alouettes quarterback Sonny Wade shone as he led a predominant team of rookies past the Calgary Stampeders by a score of 23-10. The Grey Cup was back in Montreal for the first time since 1949. In 1973, Marv Levy arrived in Montreal, and just 1 year later had the Alouettes back in the Grey Cup as they faced the Edmonton Eskimos in the 1974 Grey Cup at Vancouver's Empire Stadium. The Alouettes would prevail in blustery conditions, thanks to strong performances from Don Sweet, Sonny Wade, and Junior Ayew. Sweet kicked 14 of Montreal's 20 points. Quarterback Sonny Wade answered the call of duty as he came off the bench to replace Jimmy Jones. On defense, Junior Ayew was relentless as he knocked Eskimos quarterback Tom Wilkinson out of the game. At the final gun, their mission was complete as the Alouettes defeated the Edmonton Eskimos 20-7. The 1975 Grey Cup was a rematch with the Eskimos. A mishandled snap on a Don Sweet field goal attempt saw Montreal lose a heartbreaker to Edmonton by a score of 9-8. At the 1977 Grey Cup game in Montreal, the Alouettes had a chance to redeem themselves against the Edmonton Eskimos. On Grey Cup Sunday, snow and ice covered the artificial turf at Olympic Stadium. The Alouettes knew the field conditions were going to be a factor and found a solution. Prior to the kickoff, they punctured the soles of their shoes with a staple gun. The innovation gave them traction, while the Eskimos struggled for balance. To make up for the misfortune in '75, Don Sweet enjoyed the finest day of his career. Sweet kicked his way into the CFL record book with 23 points in a convincing 41-6 Grey Cup victory over the Edmonton Eskimos before a jubilant hometown crowd. Montreal would lose to the powerful Eskimos in the 1978 and '79 Grey Cup games. In 1986, CFL football left Montreal and was born again in 1996. By 2000, the Alouettes were again challenging for the Grey Cup, but would fall to the Lions. Two years later, at Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium, the Alouettes were back in the Grey Cup to face the Eskimos. The genius of head coach Don Matthews and superb quarterbacking by Anthony Cavillo led the Alouettes to a 25-16 Grey Cup win. For the first time since 1977, the Montreal Alouettes were Grey Cup champions. The Montreal Alouettes continue their rich tradition as future generations strive to become Grey Cup champions. Canadian football is a magic show. It is a game that has grabbed our nation by the heart. This is the story of CFL Traditions, a 5-hour television special that showcases the history and heroes of Canadian football. Live the game's greatest moments through the eyes and hearts of its most celebrated legends. Now available on DVD and VHS, CFL Traditions is the ultimate collector's edition. Each of the 9 franchises is featured in their own special team edition release. 9 teams, 9 titles, available in stores everywhere.
Canadian football is something I was brought up on. I love the game because it's quick. It has always allowed the quarterback to be able to run with the ball, and I thoroughly enjoyed that challenge.
In the Canadian League, there's no such thing as being a rookie. You're a contributor or you're not, or else you don't make it.
The excitement in the game, in a Canadian football game, with the 3 downs, with the wider field, with the kick return, it may be the best game in the world to watch on television.
It's so fast, it's so wide open, and I think it speaks to my personality. It's sort of a living on the edge type of football game.
It's exciting. You're never out of a ball game in the Canadian Football League. And as a quarterback, that's all you want is a chance. You want to have the ball in your hands with 1 minute to play and give your team a chance to win the ball game.
It was an opportunity that I was being given that I didn't see happening in my own country. And I really weighed the pros and cons of going to Canada or staying in the United States, and I chose to go to Canada because they were giving me a realistic opportunity to play the game that I loved.
I came up just with the attitude that I was going to learn about the CFL, put my best foot forward. Whatever it took, I was going to get the job done, and anything else was not acceptable.
I wanted to come play. And in the NFL, they would have just used me for, okay, for this and for that. And in Edmonton, I knew I had a chance to do what I wanted to do and play the game.
It put the fun back in football for me. It enabled me to go back out, just be an athlete, play football, and enjoy it. And I'll be forever grateful for that.
The Canadian Football League is arguably the most significant cultural institution in the country as it relates to bringing cities across the country together.
It's the one thing, the one professional sport that we have left that we can say is purely Canadian. It's the only one.